So in this case study, I'm going to explain the step-by-step growth framework. Great. So this is it. I mean, it was a 12-month period, and as you can see, this is the screenshot from the dashboard. And you see that in the last 365 days, this is what it achieved. A total of 176,000 pounds in spend, 35.4K in purchases, 1.47 million, almost 1.5 million in terms of revenue, and 8.32 in terms of ROAS. Now, this is conversion value, so we often use conversion value by time, so that would actually be even more. So there would be some lag here, at least for the recent period. But since it's such a last date range, I thought that this is a good enough metric to look at. So the client that we are talking about is a kids and adults party wear, accessories, costumes, and toys kind of a marketplace. So it's kind of a fun marketplace. It's UK based, as you understand. It's in pounds. And so the nature of the industry is a little unusual. It's casual. It's entirely fun, accessories sort of an industry. Now let's talk about the challenges. The first challenge was that it had a huge and diverse inventory, a very complex custom website. The profit margins varied widely across different product categories, and even within categories across products. They had their own branded products, but the larger part was actually from non-branded, or rather from other brands and not their own brand. And there was a huge profit margin variation because during acquiring the products from third-party players from other brands, they obviously lost that margin percentage, and so that was one problem. The other part, and in most cases actually, it was not a very good profit margin, so which is why it was very important to have a very high ROAS. And they also had a very low AOV. Okay, so you can actually do the math from here as well. Just around 20, 30 pounds in AOV, and some were even lower than that. So that was a challenge. Strong seasonal components. You would understand that there were a lot of different kinds of products which would be quite seasonal, and in this case, so for instance, there were very summer-centric products, some were very winter-centric products, and also some very event-specific, like some occasion-oriented, like for instance, very specific to Christmas, very specific to Halloween. So that, those kinds of products were very much there. And on top of that, there were also stock issues. So there were times when products would go out of stock, and therefore it would be very difficult to restock them in time. So we had to actually do inventory management for them to some extent, help them with that, and the inventory analytics therefore played an important part. So you can understand already from the challenges that there's going to be a lot of analytical involvement in tackling these challenges, and that's what me and my team did pretty well. Now, here's the big bonus though, the advantages. So when we talk about the challenges, does it make sense? Um, the client was actually very supportive, which I will go on to mention. But at the same time, they already had some sort of brand presence, for instance, on social, like TikTok. So they were growing that organically. Um, I don't think till date they have run TikTok ads. They are doing very well organically. And they also have, a very decent brand presence generally on offline market as well to some extent. Although by offline, I mean just word of mouth. They didn't have any retail stores or anything, but since they were selling products from multiple brands, anyone who was interested in this kind of party or fun accessories or kids toys or games and all, people knew about this particular brand in some way. But for some reason, the Google search volume of the branded term was actually not very high. Okay, so uh, just how things are. Now, there's also a good conversion rate. So that was very important because without a good conversion rate, and there's always like a base conversion rate, right? For any brand, uh, if it's if it does not have a baseline conversion rate, you can't really do much CRO. You can't really do much through your campaigns to other strategies. It just means that the product doesn't have that kind of demand in the first place. But fortunately for this kind of industry, or particularly for this brand, it did have a pretty good conversion rate. And like I said, very invested. Like they were very interested. They were always keen in helping out. a very good development team. And like I already mentioned, it had a custom built website, right? And the website was also pretty complex. And I think it was complex because of the nature of the inventory, and I'm talking about hundreds and thousands of SKUs literally. And that actually made things very complicated. We had to go through so many iterations and normal things like, just adding products or item IDs to listing groups wouldn't work. We would understand because it hit the maximum limit. So all those kinds of problems appeared, problems with custom labels and all. We'll come to that in a moment. But there, the development team actually was very, very helpful. So then let's now talk about some of the attempts. So obviously we're talking about Google Ads. So Performance Max actually played a big role in this. And you might be immediately wondering why not standard shopping. We're going to come to that. So, but yeah, we tried Performance Max product wise, we tried it brand wise, category wise, offer wise, with assets and without assets. And now the big reveal, what really worked, the strategic testing of audience signals. So audience signals did matter, and the Performance Max network split, understanding performance across different kinds of networks, whether Google, search, shopping, display, and other networks, video with assets. So that's the main reveal here, the main revelation as to what really worked, because in most cases we know it's almost become household knowledge by now that it's really feed only to Performance Max that works. But in this case, we saw that it was with assets. Okay, that actually did well. And the Pareto principle, of course, 80% of the revenue came from 20% of the processing. In fact, I would say it's sort of a special case of the Pareto principle, where about more than 90% of the revenue actually came from, from just about 10 to 8% of the products, something like that. So the demand gen campaign that actually helped in this case. So it actually helped generate demand in the top of the funnel, and we'll see how that actually blends into the whole incrementality ecosystem. Now, what didn't work? Well, search campaigns, except for very special ones, which were very offer-centric ones. Like, for instance, we would launch some search campaigns with very relevant keywords, some of which you might be able to imagine given the nature of the industry around the time of, say, Christmas or Halloween. Those did well, but they were for very short periods of time, as you can understand, very short burst campaigns. Otherwise, search campaigns just didn't work. So we didn't have to grapple with the complexity of the PMax cannibalizing search campaigns in this case. And lo and behold, standard shopping didn't work. Okay, now I know that that's kind of becoming the thing to sort of move away from PMax and go back to standard shopping, but in this case it didn't work. Right? We tried all sorts of approaches. We tried it again, very similar to PMax. We tried having separate standard shopping campaigns by product categories, by offers, and we tried brand exclusion, branded, non-branded standard shopping, all kinds of things, but except for very small, limited successes, they, in general, from a broader holistic perspective, they work, right? And by didn't work, by the way, of course, I just don't mean that they didn't get good ROAS or get good returns, because we know that Sun Shopping doesn't often get that. It sort of helped. That's kind of like the feeder strategy, right, by John Moran, and it helped. So they are supposed to help in adding people to the top of the funnel, getting new users into the funnel so that PMax can help convert them, but that didn't work either. So some of the tactics that actually worked, really good discounting and timely offers, and then segmentation by categories and best sellers. Okay, very important in this context, because we did a lot of analysis on the best sellers, like, best sellers previous year, same time, same period, best sellers last 3 months, best sellers last 6 months, best sellers 9 months. And in so many ways we took the data from GFO. We sort of did a lookup with data from Google Ads. We did data from their overall store data, which we sort of exported, and try to see if from other channels also there's something else that we can learn from. But somehow just looking at bestsellers didn't work, and it's probably because, and you can kind of understand, the LTV aspect of it wasn't that big, because it's like a fun exercise product. Like, people aren't going to just keep coming back and buying, right? You can't really create a habit. These are mostly fun impulse purchases, and people won't really be generating a habit. Okay, and that's one of the problems of this. And it's entirely about the novelty of the products in most cases that will actually keep or rather get people to purchase rather than sort of a continued life cycle, which would make them come back and make purchases. So that's why category-wise segmentation was important, and you understand by now that given the complexity of the inventory, segmentation by categories was actually a very difficult thing to do. We had so many campaigns. At one point we were having like 40 plus campaigns, and it was a really bulky account. Now, server-side tracking played a very important role here because we'll actually come to that, but that actually helped just improve data quality. Unconventional account structure, we already said that it was with Asset Camp, the performance max that actually did better. We had custom landing pages, right? That was very important. Again, in e-commerce, we don't often do that, but I think it can be so important, especially because it's not Shopify and because of the complexity of the inventory and the custom built website. What sometimes happened really is that when suppose we were trying to promote Christmas, okay, products related to Christmas, pretty much every product on the website was actually related to Christmas. So how do we promote it, right? So is it going to be the landing page, or is it going to be like a subsection of products. So basically, it was a custom landing page, and we did it. In fact, there were quite a few variations. So very good CRO in that sense because we were able to A/B test things from these multiple kinds of landing pages. Sometimes we just focused on the categories with very large sections dedicated to them and quite a bit of content. On other occasions, it would mostly be a display of the different product variations. So we did so many things, and we're testing different placements of the buttons on different parts of the landing page. I wish I could show the variations. Unfortunately, I can't because then it will just reveal everything. But yeah, this was really useful actually. Then we also did search terms mining from PMax Insights, and this is actually critical in this segment because, like I already mentioned, that LTV was a very big thing. And although I'll come to that later, we did have customer lists and all, but it was actually search terms that played an important role. First party data was of course definitely important, but so were search terms, and that was pretty much the most important thing. We tested so many audience signals. We found that search terms were the most important, even though they were available in market and other kinds of interest audiences. But performance-wise, search terms had the highest impact, and therefore we had to mine and sort of really fine-tune the data from PMax Insights because there were no such campaigns. Remember, we had, of course, some scan shopping campaigns from which we were able to retrieve some, search terms. Also, we ran DSA for a while. So those things were helpful, but mostly it was PMax. And for that, we actually used a clustering methodology to understand what were really performing well. So I'm just going to come to that in a moment and actually show you some of the tools, by the way, which we used. And most of the tools were very simple spreadsheet-based ones, and these were very instrumental in helping us achieve these numbers. So let's quickly go through the couple of phases that we actually had. So first of all, when the client approached us, he was not generating much from Google, just a couple of thousand pounds a month. He was generating a fair bit though from other sources, like I already mentioned, some sort of an established brand, a small brand, but it was getting a steady flow of sales already. But from Google it wasn't. And the first thing was, it was the toughest phase, and that was figuring out all of this. You understand, you get such an important project, right? Because they were open to spending like 100,000 pounds a month, or several 100,000 pounds a month. Doesn't matter, like million pounds if you could scale it to that point. So we knew that we had to track it. But the very first thing that we experienced was that the tracking was a complete mess. Like we saw on the dashboard that there were so many conversions, and we were like puzzled for a second. But then we immediately saw the revenue column, and then we saw that it's almost the same in most cases, or very similar numbers, like number of conversions equaling number of the amount of revenue. Then it really meant that something's wrong, like they're probably tracking page view and all. So it didn't take long to figure that out. The problem was solving for it because they had a complex tag management system in place. So we had to get in touch with them and solve the tag management problem. And then we figured it out after that. So Google Ads conversion tracking was actually set up wrongly, where conversion was being fired on every page view. So that was a problem, and that's all of that was happening with a value of 1. So we had to fix that. The next thing we really did was, just wait it out, actually. The next thing was, the immediate thing we did was wait it out for the next 7 days because we knew that immediately there will be some improvement in this entire thing. So over the next 7 days, we saw that things started improving a little bit, and we hadn't yet made any structural changes yet to the account. So the client was supportive, again, I'll reiterate, and that definitely helped. And that's very important in these kinds of accounts, actually, because he was willing to wait it out and see what was working and what was not. So we fixed the tracking, we fixed the account architecture. That was the next thing we did. We saw what kind of campaigns were set up. We saw that there was a lot of overlap across the campaigns. We tried to figure out, what could actually be eliminated and what should be kept. And the next thing that we immediately did was to actually focus on organizing the existing campaigns. So we saw the change history, and we saw that, there was the tracking was actually working at some point, and then it had been, there had been some changes that were made on the account, and those were incorrect. So basically, what I mean is, historically, there was a point when the tracking was correct, and then we saw everything completely going haywire. So there's actually a mix of correct and incorrect information. So what we did is therefore went ahead and deleted. There's a way to sort of remove or delete that history from Google's algorithm. And we did that basically for that particular period when we saw that there were tracking errors. So yeah, let's now come to standard shopping with working in tandem with PMax, the feeder strategy theory. It was still in vogue, and we had already got we were aware of a thing. And we had got some good results in some cases with PMax feed only. However, it backfired, like as I said already when we launched it. So it was an oversight on our part, I say, and that's because the nature of this industry, the nature of the products, just meant that it was a little bit more visual, and therefore it didn't really make sense for this kind of strategy to work because it wasn't necessarily on the shopping network that people will purchase. People will get interested in impulse purchases in this sort of product. It wasn't really solving a problem, if I understand that, and I think that's the kind of product that actually sells better through shopping networks. All other, impulse-based products, those can be purchased from pretty much anywhere. All right. And by the way, we actually did Meta for them. All right. And I've not included it. So we ran Meta ads for them for quite a while, and it was not incremental. So we used to get insane ROAS on the dashboard. Um, the way we work with them is to have actually a third-party system. So it wasn't third-party; it was actually internal to them. Eventually, I helped them build an incrementality system. I'll probably try to create a replica of it. I just can't show it, of course, for confidentiality purposes. But that really helped establish, ROAS of 15, 18, that kind of insane ROAS, and sometimes even above 20 from Facebook. But we figured out that Facebook was not being incremental at all, and we tried different variations of pages and all, but it didn't work. So I just wanted to point that out. So, but yeah, Meta should have been working, but that's the point. Like TikTok was already playing its role without even running too many ads. It would just do it like occasionally. So, but yeah, from that kind of experience, we realized though that there's going to be a high probability that it may not just work necessarily only on the shopping network but on other networks as well. So it definitely makes sense to have a full build PMax campaign and for standard shopping not to work as well. We relied heavily on GA4 data. So you can see this is some GA4 data as well. Real screenshots from a 30-day period. 70,000 pounds here across different channels, and you can see cross network, which is corresponding mostly to PMax, and they did have quite a bit attributed to organic and direct as well. But I believe that there's a lot actually that's from different testing we have figured that out as well, that there's a lot that's incorrectly attributed by GA4 to organic and direct. But anyway, that's just the way things look like on GA4. So the good thing was that advanced e-commerce data was flowing in very smoothly down to a very granular level, product level details as well. So we started with the best performing categories. put them into separate PMax campaigns, tried different audience signals in each campaign, brought search names only, search names plus in-market audience. At this point, there wasn't enough audience, native audience to use, and GA4 audience was still populating. Because remember, we had started pretty much from scratch on Google Ads. We started using user audiences by pausing the least performing asset group. Now, so remember these were full build PMax campaigns, so we had to reach out for assets, and this is where we used a creative testing tracker, and this is a very similar format we use for the clients for Meta Ads as well. Where we have the ad creative and details, product focus, testing angle, the results after a certain period, and the learnings from it, and the future iterations and all of that. So this is a very similar kind of this is dummy data. This is a very similar format we actually use for PMax as well. Even though for PMax we could not get exactly performance data down to that level of granularity, but still gave us pretty good understanding because we tested out creatives through separate different creatives through separate asset groups. So that's how we approached it. Like, for instance, if we were testing 3 different kinds of audience signals for a particular category, so the way we would set it up is we would have multiple asset groups for each of those audience signals, but with different assets. So, like, for instance, if there were 2 sets of assets that we would use for each audience signal that we were testing, and there were 3 audience signals, there would be 6 asset groups within that performance max campaign for that particular category. So that's how we had set it up, and we remember we ran it for all important categories and not just bestseller categories. Right. So this helped isolate variables and test one thing at a time. Yeah, that's basically what we did. Yeah, so we had already excluded the branded terms, by the way, by reaching out to the account manager from Google. Now, we were already spending close to 10K to 15K GBP a month generating a revenue at an average of around 4 to 5. So around 50 to 60 was being generated already. Now, the extremely complex margin structure now started becoming a problem. And this meant that the bestsellers method wasn't simply going to work for them, because this was, by the way, wasn't very profitable in most cases. Like, it wasn't profitable for quite a few of the products. And therefore, we realized that this wasn't going to work, because even if they were selling a lot, it didn't necessarily mean that they were most profitable. So we had to figure out ways of selling products which had higher margins. So in the second phase, the first problem that we encountered while creating category-wise campaigns was the huge inventory. Now, we have already talked about that. The item IDs were just too many in every category, and I obviously wanted granularity. I wanted to be able to see performance and take decisions based on item ID wise performance. And so in order to do that, I would have to split out the item IDs in each listing group, and it was just not possible across the 1,000 threshold. And therefore, I tried a bizarre thing. I tried to just split out all the item IDs across different asset groups, and that was just not going to work. We figured out so many of them were like zombie products with no history, and it just completely backfired. Google failed to serve them properly, and even if they did, it was just not converting. So at that point we were spending close to 18K GBP a month, and the ROAS actually dropped in this period from 5 to 3.5. And this category-wise SKU segregated listing groups just didn't work. So we brainstormed and we figured out this was going to be the approach. We previously tried the best performing categories. This time we moved instead to the top performing categories, top performers rather, top performing item IDs in each category. So that was the approach we took this time instead. And we also realized around this point that there was a diminishing return that was setting in. So the PMax campaigns just stopped being incremental. And I'll just give an example of the kind of incrementality tests that we were doing. So this is, for instance, a spreadsheet that shows the outcome. Where this is again a dummy template transfer the actual one. So incrementality test where we had holdouts, for instance, with no PMax, and with PMax with branded terms, PMax with no brand terms. And we just figured out what was the incremental impact on the new customer revenue. So this was a multi-cell test And we just looked at stratified samples, and we saw which of the cells actually did very well. So we had a sample size calculator as well helping us with it, and we figured out the incrementality test based on this. So so that was the kind of approach we took, and we saw at this point, around this point, that the performance max campaigns, the way they were set up, were not being very incremental. One problem, of course, was the fact, which was very recent problem, which was the fact that the ROAS dropped very recently because of the SQ segregated listing groups. But even beyond that, the problem was bigger than that. So we realized that again, we could try standard shopping once more, or we could try demand gen campaigns. Now they had excellent assets. I think I made that point already. So we decided to make use of the videos. And demand gen, as you know, serves on Google on properties like Gmail, Discover, Feed, and YouTube. And the best performing in demand gen campaigns of this type of asset was the videos. They had excellent, well produced videos. Their internal team would make the videos themselves. The employees would actually spend time creating the videos, and they were very involved in this, and the videos were really fun, and they actually did very well. On demand, within demand gen campaigns. And we ran a test for about half a month. And by the way, by that time, we also had a strong first party audience. So that's what happens like when you wait it out, when you actually have a plan that will support you and you take the right kind of analytical decisions, all of the things fall in place. So we then ran a test for about a month and a half, and within a short span of time, we saw that demand gen was able to add more incremental users to the top of the funnel, right? And this then once again helped PMax campaigns become more incrementally profitable, that is, and standard shopping just failed to serve its purpose. So by now we had actually established all of the important things. We had everything in place, and we knew the growth framework. All right, the growth framework was clear to us. So we had established the campaign types, we had the data, we had set up, we had fixed the tracking, all of the things, the architecture, all of this was in place. Now it was about just doing sophisticated data analysis on a continual basis in order to maintain a growth framework, a growth trajectory. So this was the third phase, which was 15 to 24 months into the client's life cycle with us. And this time we actually started using a CSS. So CSS is it's a comparison shopping service, and Google Merchant Center is actually also a CSS, but we use a third-party one. And there are advantages of doing that. There are plenty of CSS here. We moved to a certain one, I can't name them, but we partnered with one, and they actually helped bring down the CPC. So that's what typically happens, is percentage drop in the CPCs, and that helps reduce the costs and makes the campus more profitable. And that additional budget that was unlocked, we were able to utilize on top of the funnel campaigns like demand gen. So we basically kept adding more people. So that was the whole point. At this point, we were trying to optimize the campaigns, the conversion-oriented campaigns, trying to save budget from there and putting the money back into top of the funnel. So that was the whole point of this phase. The third phase onwards, server-side tracking. This again, we were constantly tracking different kinds of things. Of course, new customer revenue was being tracked. We also use a more sophisticated way of pushing, first-party data, and this helped us track new customer revenue better, and also to actually use LTV, high-value customers. Now, I've said this before. This wasn't necessarily a very big component because nature of this business meant that there wasn't a lot of repeating customers, but we anyway fed the data back into Google. It was still pretty significant, not as big as we would have wanted, but it was still significant, and therefore we use that as well. Strategic discounting, and I'll just show that that framework. So we followed a framework. This is the kind of structure we follow for almost pretty much all occasions or special events around the year. So this BFCM, discount calculator, and you can see here, this was based on AOVs and CPMs and that sort of a structure. So this actually helped us understand that, okay, how would the discount really vary between, across different conversion rates and for different CPMs, for instance. So this was useful for us to understand the discounting structure. So this is again a dummy template. In this case, we didn't use CPMs. but we used CPC, for instance. But the whole point of it was that we were able to establish um, profitability, right? So we were looking at the margin percentages and all of that, and the profit um, profitability factors were taken into account and the break-even CACs and all. So therefore, that helped us understand at what point we would be able to give discounts in a profitable manner, and at what point we would not be able to give it. So for instance, if the conversion rate is only 1.5%, then it would have to be increased the prices by 67%, for instance. So that is a kind of flow that we required. There is a kind of structure we needed in order for us to take decisions regarding strategic discounting, and this helped us immensely. So there's the screenshot within this case study as well. And so we did a lot of other kinds of analysis. So for instance, we used our internal product analyze scripter, and this basically helps, once you dump product data here, the cost conversions and all of that, and it just, creates a summary of the products and, creates segmentation by rows and segmentation by performance. So you can see sales row, how many products in which bracket. It creates the custom labels, and it also gives out the charts, spits out the charts of histograms by rows, conversion value, and also the scatter plot of cost versus rows. So for instance, in this data, this dummy data, you can see, what is the concentration of the rows for different cost values. So for instance, for the lowest cost, you can see some high ROAS. So that makes sense because high ROAS products are only a few, and there's not going to be much that's going to be spent on them, very commonly seen. And then quite a few which is clustered around sort of average-ish ROAS and very reasonable low amount of spend. In some cases, we also had high cost, but the ROAS was low. So those were the outliers, or rather ones which were not performing as well. But that's the dummy data for you, and you can understand this is what was immensely useful for us to understand where to actually invest money. We also used, I've already shown the credit testing tracker, but this we also used, the script by microdes has been popularized, the network split script, and this is the outcome of it. For instance, and you can see again for other data apart from the account that I'm talking about, we looked at the performance across different channels, and how across different kinds of product categories and all. For the different campaigns, how for the different channels, what kind of cost percentage was there, what kind of performance metrics were there for the different networks. So that was very helpful as well. So these are the different kinds of tools that we used internally um, to actually use advanced analytics and leverage advanced analytics to help the performance. We also did income analysis, and we already we talked about the clustering tool. So I've actually shared it in my previous videos. Also, you can check it out from there. We used a clustering tool. We used K-means clustering for that to actually understand what clusters were best for search terms in order to categorize them by performance. So all of these things really helped performance augmentation at different points. So yeah, I mean, I'm going to share the link of this in the video's description as well, the link to this guide. And if you have any questions, do let me know in the comments. And definitely, as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.